Joe's bloody and brutal battle with Aragaki continues, and you're not going to believe how it ends. First off, let me just give a thumbs up to this episode of Megalo for taking my expectations and completely twisting them. I had a feeling this was just going to be the standard Cinderella Man story where the character gets beaten up for 75% of the episode, and then eventually he comes in at the end and absolutely starts whipping ass. And while a lot of that does happen, the actual fight between Joe and Aragaki ends in a way that I just did not expect or see coming. By the end of this incredibly brutal match where Joe started to get into the head of Aragaki, Aragaki just decides to quit. He's done. He forfeits the match. Joe is the winner, and he's going to move on to bigger and better things, and possibly Megalonia itself. But the reasoning behind Aragaki doing this is probably one of the best things about this entire episode. We already know that Aragaki is just completely beaten to his core. He felt like he was abandoned by his former trainer. He suffered in the war by losing his legs and getting completely burned. And now he has prosthetic limbs, can barely walk, and he's finally back. But at what cost? We actually learned that he was actually so damaged and so sick that he probably should not have been doing Megalo boxing in the first place. It's something that could have quite possibly killed him or at least put him in a bed for the rest of his life. But this was his chance to finally redeem himself and to clarify what his relationship with Nambu actually meant in the first place. It's a moment for him to come to terms with everything that's happened and to make things right and to move forward and look for a brighter tomorrow. It's one of the biggest messages about this episode, and it's definitely a message that I think we can all learn. Live to fight another day. What does it mean if you end up just killing yourself in the process? It means nothing. But if you manage to get out of a situation alive, you can come back possibly even stronger and with a brand new outlook on everything. That, and we finally got the confirmation as to what the deal was with that dog racing ticket that Nambu actually had and that apparently belonged to Aragaki himself. So the actual fight itself, before we even get to Aragaki's backstory, is pretty much what you would expect, with Joe pretty much getting dominated in the first half of the episode, but then eventually gaining his composure and even being able to get into the head of Aragaki by basically saying a lot of the things that Nambu said to him, split it evenly, 50-50. This is something that was constantly drilled into Aragaki's head when he was training with Nambu, and it really pisses him off to the point where he starts to get a little sloppy. He starts to back up a little bit. He starts to trip on his prosthetic legs, which allows Joe to get the upper hand and start delivering some intense body blows and shots to the face. It's just really satisfying in the best way possible, and I was so pumped for that final round because I was like, this is it. Joe's just going to bring the heat in this one, and then Aragaki takes a step back. He decides to forfeit. Something that his entire team is okay with, and funny little thing, I didn't know that his trainer's name was actually Miyagi. Aragaki's trainer's name is Mr. Miyagi. Karate Kid jokes, insert them here. So Aragaki decides to leave, knowing that if he goes any further, he could possibly destroy his body, and he no longer has a grudge against Nambu or Joe or even the Megalo boxing thing in general. He's now finally at peace with things, and the final scene with Nambu honestly choked me up quite a bit. It was the type of reunion I was really hoping for between these two characters, especially when he realizes that in order to have a better tomorrow, he's going to have to let this stuff go. He's going to have to get rid of the past, move forward, and start a brand new day. And that means allowing himself to give up something he loves and to become someone different. While at the same time, we also have that great scene with the dog racing ticket. So in the last episode, we had that flashback sequence where he was about to kill himself, gun in his mouth, when suddenly he sees that dog racing ticket on the floor, and then he stops himself from doing it. What this is actually a good luck charm that Nambu uses, and he decided to give it to him when he went off to the war, and he kept it this entire time, knowing that it was really the only thing that actually kept him alive in the first place. But this, combined with his swirling emotions and extreme trauma to his body, caused him to view Nambu in a completely different light. It wasn't until he actually fought against Joe and saw what he was going through and what he was willing to sacrifice that he realized everything he was doing was completely wrong. This was a great moment between these characters as they're both able to admit their faults to one another and they're finally at peace with each other. That and the fact that Aragaki ends up giving the ticket right back to Nambu, who says to give it to Joe as a good luck charm. And speaking of Joe, I actually honestly expected him to be a little upset over the fact that Aragaki decided to just forfeit the match and not go through with it anymore. I figured he'd actually want to be able to finish the fight, but considering how much crap he went through in this episode and all the punches to the face he took, he probably felt a little more relieved. Also, the fact that they're going to be moving up a lot more in the ranks. And this is starting to catch the attention of the entire Megalo box world. You get to see that Yuri is still paying a lot of attention to Joe, not to mention all these brand new fighters who are entering Megalonia are starting to be introduced. They introduced this one super gigantic dude whose name is Glenn Burroughs, the Bloody Lion. He is just this gigantic jacked dude who basically just looks like he's going to be all brute force and muscle. Think King Hippo from Punch-Out! That's basically, I think, the type of fighter that this guy is going to be. He also just comes across as just a very brutish type of character, so honestly, I can't wait to see him actually get his comeuppance. Little by little, they're starting to build up all of these individual fighters, and considering there's less than a month until Megalonia, things are really going to kick off from here. So, what's the rundown on this episode of Megalo Box? A very satisfying episode. And very emotional. I didn't expect it to get that emotional in this episode, but it was handled so well and with such gusto. The last two episodes really have thrown me through the ringer, not for its action, but for Aragaki's entire story, for how stark, disturbing, and how realistic it can possibly be. A lot of people who go through this post-traumatic stress do end up blaming people for them, and it can completely blind them, take them over with their rage. And for him to actually get over it in the middle of a boxing match is one of the manliest things ever. That and just the fact that this guy went into this fight knowing that he could die and never even fight again, that's just metal as hell right there. I absolutely love that. That and watching Joe just start to get into the fight in this episode was really fun. Because, I mean, he basically got knocked out in the last episode, and this one he keeps getting hit, but he just keeps on getting up, floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. Joe is just a really awesome character, but the stars of this episode for me are easily Aragaki and Nambu, their relationship and how they actually built it up over the course of these last two episodes. I mean, they basically crammed practically an entire movie into 2 episodes, and it was really satisfying the way that it was told. I don't think that Joe's going to get any more freebies, though, as we go on from here. From here on out, things are going to get more intense, and I'm awaiting the moment when Joe is actually going to get his actual gear, because the build-up to that is insane. It probably won't happen until we actually see him in real Megalonia battles, but I'm anxious to see what that's actually going to be. I have a theory it's going to be that one that they actually stole from that junker, and it's actually been upgraded and repaired. At least that's the way I see it. It seems like it really fits him as well, and it was probably a nice little way to sort of tease all of that. As far as production value goes, this was a pretty good-looking episode. All of the hits were pretty cool. There was one moment in particular where both Joe and Aragaki are punching each other continuously as the camera pans around both of them in a big circular motion. It just looked visually very striking. I love that. That being said, it was not a perfect episode, and there are moments where I feel that this boxing series is quite literally pulling its punches. There are times when the hits don't feel as weighty as they should, and they don't have enough impact, if you know what I'm talking about. I really feel they need to add a little more speed to some of these fights, considering this is a show about dudes wearing robot arms who box. For the most part, it just looks like normal boxing. Sometimes it doesn't even look like these hits actually hurt, and I think they just, like I said, need to add more weight to some of these attacks. That being said, that's just a minor nitpick, and this was a fantastic episode of Megalobox. In fact, even my issues with the production value are not going to affect the score. I thought this was another fantastic addition to the series. I'm falling in love with these characters, and I cannot wait to see more of the rags to riches story that is Gearless Joe. This was a great episode, 5 out of 5 from me. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. You can tell me all of them in the comment section below. What did you think of Joe's battle with Aragaki? What did you think about his entire backstory? And what do you hope to see from the rest of Megalobox? Thank you guys for watching this review. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay down there, baby.